I had fun doing that little poem, like reading and commentary yesterday. So I'm gonna do another one on this little poem, which has a bit more of a clear thread of imagery to it. Cataclysm. Crucifixion cracked, arrhythmia in the granite, but the heart keeps squeezing, flood waters freezing and unfreezing, a river riven, garden cleaving after shudder of the earthquake, tremoring heavenward in saplings, groaning roots up, waiting, waiting for his raining footfall. Very complex. Okay, where do I even start unpacking this? I guess I made just now like a little picture version of the central imagery of it, which I will also show. So like, all right, backstory for this poem. Um, I was hiking with some part of my extended family, and we there was like some boulders that had cracks in them. There was a sign that explained how over centuries of water freezing and unfreezing creates stresses and weaknesses in the rock and widens these cracks and then breaks down the soil, and then like things can start to grow out of the rocks. And it's just this process, cyclical process that breaks down the rock. And I thought that was very beautiful. And then one of the people that I was with had commented, and they were like, no, like actually it's when Jesus died, in the crucifixion, that created earthquakes. And that's why there are these cracks in the rock as like a result of that cataclysm, of that disaster. And I was like, how about both? Um, this does that doesn't really show up in the poem, at least in the current version of the poem. But so I guess underlying this whole little image here is that tension between, it's a very Jonathan Pajot kind of thoughts I was having at the time, the like tension between the literal sort of interpretation of scripture, um, to the exclusion of the like evolution and scientific like processes. So just a very black and white view that nevertheless preserves that like stark symbolism, because there is something beautiful in the idea that was that one event years ago, and we still see the repercussions of it, like all these centuries later, that the rocks are cracked like from that, and that event is still touching our world in a tangible way today. I think there's truth in that's beautiful. Then there was also beauty and value and truth that I saw in like just the purely like more secular view that doesn't bring like meaning or symbolism into it at all. That's just like, okay, well, the ice, and it freezes and unfreezes, and slowly we have rocks and dirt. So this poem was me playing with both of those, and sort of synthesizing them to get the best of both worlds, both the touching beauty and almost innocence of that view of like, oh yeah, the rocks are cracked because of Jesus dying. And the nuance and the like cyclical and the like I guess the nuance of the, I don't want to say scientific, but like the natural processes. That's what I'm looking for. The nuance of the like natural processes, in my view, by which the original sort of cataclysm is carried out and even redeemed. I don't love the poem itself, I think, but I really like the imagery beneath it. It's something I think about a lot. So I guess there's that first underlying sort of background. How do I want to do this? Which is really necessary for understanding the poem. So possibly I would put like some little, bit here, the, background stuff. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, the first one I wanted to capture, like in those first two lines, the both halves of that. Like, so you have the crucifixion, right, which is this very dense, symbolic image, but also, like a historical event is the claim. And then like some rocks being cracked, and just both of those, connecting those two. So I guess you'll say like, what do you call that? Tension. Symbol or myth, and well, I shouldn't call it myth because David Bentley Hart would get on me for that, since Christianity does have this historical aspect, but I guess that's in there. I don't know. Symbol, myth, and like, what do we say, natural processes. And just the present, reality. So there's that underlying tension. The idea of cataclysm, I am taking this image of crucifixion, of the crucifixion, of the death of Christ, and sort of extending that in, kind of bringing it into outside of the realm of purely chronology and like purely historical event, but up into the level of more deep, I guess you could also say, into the level of like, I don't know what else to say but symbol, to the heavens in the terms of Peugeot. On the level of a universal natural force, like, say, erosion, or like entropy or something that we see operating universally, sort of throughout in many ways. To me, something like the crucifixion is that sort of a force. So there's some like flood imagery in this too. The flood being another one of those like archetypal, maybe that's the word I'm looking for, archetypal images of disaster, of destruction, judgment, however, cataclysm. So So like fiction, flood, I guess Eve, well, the final judgment is more of like a, should I get bangs? I don't know. I feel like my hair, I should maybe part it differently, but I try to sometimes, but I never like, the crucifixion, the flood, what are some other stuff that fits into this? Oh, I don't know, the fall. Apocalypse. Yeah, those kinds of patterns. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go back to the picture. So this, I suppose, is the basic picture that is in my head when I read the poem. So like you have the idea of the crucifixion. I don't think you can see possibly can't see my cursor, so I will just have the idea of the crucifixion. Somewhere then there's some thread connecting that all the way up to these cracks in this rock. This rock, which then become, again, through these processes of cycles of time, erosion, freezing, unfreezing, this rhythm, then become, trees, which have a similar, of course, there's that fractal branch structure that I just bring into everything, but they then become this tree, right? Oh, ran, and of course the tree and the cross. Oh, I didn't even notice that. But they then become this tree. Which, this also has to do, I guess, with Pierre Teilhard de Chardin's idea of like life ascending out of matter, right? There's an impulse upward. But I'm trying to get, anyway, they become this tree, and the impulse of the tree and the whole idea of it is to go up and to take in the light, and to take in the water. And there's the idea of like the creation groaning and waiting. And anyway, the idea of the cross is that it's going to lead to the resurrection, or to the resurrection, to the like return of Christ, right? So so those cracks from the Cataclysm producing through these rhythm of this whole boulder is, I drew it, try to make it somewhat look like a heart. Anyway, all of that combines to produce this tree and these things that are through the set cycles continually going up and like just waiting for, again, or for the return of, sort of for the consummation of everything for which they exist, and for the wrapping back around of this original event which gave rise to them in the first place. Which is here represented by the rain. I represent a lot of things with rain. There's like the water cycle, there's like time. Yeah. That's sort of the basic thread, or the basic movement. Another way to talk about this would be in terms of fundamental movements underneath, I guess. So one of them is like rhythm, like the cycles, time, or of nature. That has to do with That's, of course, that would be, I suppose, the feminine symbolism to the masculine symbolism of like this one event and the cross, if we want to analyze it that way. So anyway, one of the underlying movements in this whole thing is that like rhythm is progressively developing rhythm, and then the other one is this, which is like an constant upward straining, upward movement. Consequences sort of consistently unfolding of that original event, in this case the crucifixion. But you could also look at it as sort of any tragedy or any cataclysm. I guess this could also be read in terms of like forgiveness, or in terms of how disaster is redeemed. And so yeah, I guess there's those two movements. No. So there's those two movements underlining. There's this whole imagery of that. How else? What do I want to say next? Of course, obviously there's a pun on rain and rain. I thought that the general sound of this, I wanted to put this to music actually, but I never could. It wasn't quite good, like orderly enough to be a song to me, or my music skills aren't quite there. But, I think it has a good sound. I was wanting to have a certain sound, especially to go with these almost more musical, underlying movements. You know, crucifixion, cracked arrhythmia, cracked and granite. That's echoes. Squeezing, freezing, unfreezing, cleaving, of course. River, riven. Love the word riven. Can't write a poem without bringing in river imagery. Oh, cleaving as well. Oh, yeah, I said that. Tremoring heavenward. It's up, waiting, raining. Yeah. A way of linking one word into the next, and it gives a sense of coherence to the whole sound of the thing. Yes. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's the nature of symbolism is that you could spend ages unpacking everything and going from different angles, and there's endless depth. So there's I suppose here I am conflating the image of the crucifixion with, can I do another note? Highlight it. But the thing is, I was gonna highlight that. It doesn't even show. Oh well. I need like multiple layers. I need this in 4 dimensions. Anyway, conflating the image of crucifixion with the fall, with sort of the catastrophe or like brokenness observable in the world. I am conflating like fall and crucifixion as sort of parts of the same fundamental brokenness in the cosmos. Yeah. So because of this disaster, there being this arrhythmia, yeah, that has to do with that movement too. Also like arrhythmia and dissonance. Tying into that. Anyway, so because of this event, there being an arrhythmia, something off in sort of the whole cosmos, the whole system, the whole heart. However, the processes go on, right? Even after, despite and through that, the processes go on. The heart keeps squeezing, floodwaters freezing, unfreezing, the cycles, the ages subsequent to that, floodwaters, the flood. River Riven, that may have just been in there for the sound. There is the idea of the blood and water flowing from Christ's side. So that could also be a thing of the continued flow of an event through history. Riven, yeah, sure. Garden cleaving. What is that, like the Garden of Eden being cleft, being broken apart? Doesn't precisely fit, perhaps, but garden cleaving. Well, cleaving has two meanings, right? It means both like to cleave apart and to cling to. So I like that word being in there. And the garden is, after all, clinging to the rock and coming out of it by being cleft. So there's something there. And then again, that the shuddering and the heart beating. Yeah, I don't know. It's that like tension of death and life being bound up. Inevitably in the sort of cycles of nature and like evolution. It is the very after shudder of the earthquake. This is a little bit melodramatic, but it is the very after shudder of that earthquake, of that initial separation, of that even sets in motion the whole. This is the atemporal fall, if you believe in that. It's more that, but like that sets in motion this whole process of the heart and this whole rhythm of everything and cycles of nature that gives rise to the stuff in the first place. So yeah, it is. The after shudder of the earthquake that then is going up, I guess, to find the consummation of the original event that brought it into being. Groaning roots up, of course, the whole creation groans and travails in pain together. Some sociology stuff in this, sure, trying to like yeah, creating itself, being created, and dragging itself out of this brokenness through the brokenness up. Yeah. There's some beautiful images in Oh Hello's songs about uh what is it? There they were pointing ever east to see the ever turning eon cease. Their wills were bent on waiting with all their might. This is in conversation with that somewhat, I suppose. The raining footfall bit doesn't emerge naturally from the preceding imagery. It should. I don't know. You have to sort of know about the resurrection for that to make any sense. There should be something here that makes sense for there to be rain that like fulfills, but who knows? Let's see. Also, sort of paradox of the like pre-temporal fall. The cataclysm was before creation, was before the cosmos, and the cosmos has arisen out of it in the first place. There's another image that I have never written down, but I was just riding my bike looking at like cracks in the asphalt and thinking about it, and this image really fits into this poem, which was like, so you think of that initial separation between, say, I don't know, that initial separation, right? You could say between self and other, or between creator and creation. And that's like a crack that runs down the center of what was once unified. I'm You can't say that because you're speaking about events, quote unquote, outside of time. Language completely falls apart at this point. But yeah, so let's to put it that way, that it was once unified, but then you have that crack of initial separation, and then it keeps developing, right? And things split apart further and further, and then you think of like five, like if the crack was to split into one and two, and then like five, and to be like a hand to hold on. It is through that separation that existence can exist at all, that love can exist, right? That we can hold on, that God can be known in one sense, the Trinity in another sense. Maybe someday I'll organize all of this into like a proper lecture on um, with this and this as illustrations and notes. It should be fun. Hold on. Hey, go away. Okay. I will just read it one more time, and I really have trouble with like intros and outros. How is that what it's called? Just, and like getting in and out of a conversation. It's sort of so awkward. Like, what do you say? Anyhow, Cataclysm. Crucifixion cracked arrhythmia in the granite, but the heart keeps squeezing, floodwaters freezing and unfreezing, a river riven, garden cleaving. After shudder of the earthquake, tremoring heavenward in saplings, groaning, roots up, waiting, waiting for his raining footfall.